Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, welcome. My name is Dejan Hanzalek, and you are watching the 49th talk of the scheduling seminar. I'm happy to introduce Maria Elena Bruni. She is with the University of Calabria in Italy. She earned the degree of Management Engineer in Calabria and the degree of Master of Healthcare Management in Sapienza University in Rome, and finally a PhD in operations research. She teaches courses on optimization and business process management. Her main research is in project scheduling, healthcare planning, and routing, and typically she deals with problems under uncertainty. Maria is also associated editor of Networks Journal and member of CERLIT, Canadian Center in Logistics and Transportation. She is also a member or organizer of several conferences like economies, for example. Maria, it's great to have you here, and please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind invitation. I'm very, very pleased to be here to give this seminar. This is my favorite seminar series, so I'm excited to be here and to give this seminar to you. Okay, I will try to, okay, can you see it? Okay, in full screen, I think so.
Yes, we see it properly.
Okay, so I will present a joint work with Oncu Hazir from the School of Business. And I will talk about enhancing project resilience through a risk-averse approach. And I will start with a bit of motivation for this research work, and I will want to show you the European Payment Report 2023, which is a report released every year by Intrum. Intrum is the leading European society for credit management and also cash flow management, and the insights are based on a survey of more than 10,000 companies across 29 European countries. And I want to show you just some infographics, which I think they are interesting. 56% of the business are regularly practicing late payment. On the one hand, in Europe, and on the other hand, they consider cash and financial debt management a strategic priority, and they think that this priority has never been so important as it's today. On the other hand, what is impressive is the cost related to the payments. So here, chasing payment is costing Europe €250 billion, which is an impressive number, and per year, and many hours per week and many days per year are spent by chasing payments. These findings are also confirmed by other sources. For example, in the European Commission, in this site, euronews.com, accessed in May, reported that more than 60% of EU business are still not paid on time, and 25% of bankruptcies are due to invoices not being paid on time, which is really dramatic. It's a dramatic statistic. 158 million are spent in financing costs, and 20% of business consider payment delays a barrier to their green transition. This is also important because, in fact, green and sustainable transition will lead the way for a better future. So we should, in any case, have a look at this, also this aspect. What about projects? Here I have reported a few news on the online press concerning mega projects that were threatened by or challenged by late payments. And this is not only a problem of mega projects. In fact, on the right bottom, you can read that delayed payments also affect the construction sector in US. And in fact, the Rabbit company, which is a software company for construction projects, reported this year that late payments impact projects, increasing time, risk, and money. Okay, so now I think I have convinced you that this problem is worth investigating, and late payments are a challenge that companies need to face every single day, and the problem is becoming more and more important and serious in the complex economic landscape that we are living today. And so the research question is, are we able to provide OR tool, decision support tool to the companies to better face this problem, to cope with this challenge caused by late payments? And in particular, are we able to answer to the question, how firms compensate the lack of liquidity generated by payment delays? And we try to answer this question by considering some features of the problem. In particular, we are interested in maximizing the net present value of the project, considering delayed payments. And we want to minimize the financing costs related to these delays under uncertainty and considering the risk. Okay, a bit of literature review. The max NPV problem has been extensively studied in the literature, so this is not an exhaustive list. It just these are just a few representative papers that dealt with similar problem that we have in this talk and that we have considered. And as you can see, a few of these papers considered uncertainty, and among these few, just two considered the risk. So in particular, in 2005 and 2020, the chance contract and the conditional valued risk, which is also one of our objectives. We are considering financing costs rather originally, and distributionally robustness also is included into the model. So what I will present is a two-stage distributionally robust model with and without risk for the max NP value with financing cost, with the aim of minimizing financing costs under delays in payments. And I will start simple with an example. So I have 4 activities here, and then 2 dummy activities that they start at the end of the project. Beside each activity, I have the duration and the cash outflows and inflows. Okay, cash outflows are denoted with a minus because they are expenses related to the completion of the activity. And instead, cash inflows are payments which are usually received at completion of the activity, of each activity. And I have precedence relationships here. And of course, considering that graph, I can build a schedule. The schedule is feasible with respect to the precedence that I have in the network here. And for instance, this is a possible schedule. And associated to each schedule, we have a profile, a cash flow profile. So for instance, here, I start with an initial capital of 30. Then I start activity 3 and 4, so the capital drops to 0. Then when activity 3 finishes at time t equal to 3, I gain 20, so I receive a payment. And then again, the cash flow is stable until activity 4 finishes, when I receive another payment. But then also activity 5 starts, and then I should pay. I should have a cash outflows of minus 25. So in total, I have 15, and so on and so forth. So I can build the cash flow profile for this schedule. However, here I'm assuming that payments are received at the completion of the activity, exactly when an activity is completed. But what happens if some of the payments are delayed, they are late? So for instance, here I've considered the delay in payments for activity 4 and 5. And when activity 4 finishes, the payment is not received. But in any case, I should start activity 5 to follow the schedule, the pre-planned schedule. And when activity 5 finishes, I don't receive the payment because the payment is late also for this activity. And I will increase my cash flow just right before the completion of the project. So in this situation here, I have, of course, a shortage of liquidity, a shortage of cash flow. And so the problem is how to deal with this. Of course, if I had known that activity 4 and 5 were late, probably I would have chosen another schedule. For instance, this schedule here is feasible because I can anticipate activity 2 and I can postpone activity 4 and 5. And in this case, my cash flow profile is much, much better. So the point is, the question is, are we able to exploit the information that we have about delays in payments in order to build a schedule which are more robust, more resilient to some extent, so they are better edged against this uncertainty? And so this is the question that we want to answer, and we develop a model starting from a deterministic model. First, I will explain step by step what was the reasoning and the final formulation of our model. So the feature that we have considered are the classical features. So activities have precedence relations. We have a deadline for the project completion, and we maximize the discounted cash flow, the net present value, in which income and expenses are discounted back to the present. Under these assumptions, I can formulate my deterministic model as follows. This is not true. This is not new. Of course, we have many papers dealing with this problem. So these are time indexed variables. I assume to have V activities to schedule. And I have binary variable xit, which are equal to 1 if activity I is started at time t and 0 otherwise. Of course, the first set of constraints say that each activity should start in only one period. Then we have a precedence relationship. So the starting times of all the successor activities should satisfy the precedence, should be greater than the completion time of the preceding activities. And then we have these QIT variables. QIT are binary variable. One, if the completion time of activity the payment time, which in this case is equal to the completion time because we don't have delay. But the payment time of activity I is at time t and 0 otherwise. And the last constraint is about the deadline of the project. So this is a typical max NPV model. In fact, into the objective function, we maximize the discounted value of the cash outflow and the cash inflows. So nothing new, but the use of these Q variables that in any case we need afterwards. And so that's why we have introduced this. Okay, here I'm assuming that payments occur at the completion of the activities. But now I want to go a bit further. And so into this max NPV problem, I want to inject uncertainty and then ambiguity and also considering the risk. Okay, so here the uncertainty is related to the delays, possible delays in payments. And when I have a problem under uncertainty, one of the classical paradigm that we can use is a two-stage stochastic programming problem. In our case, this is a two-stage stochastic integer problem because we have integrality restriction. In particular, we have binary variables. So in the first stage, I have to make decisions under uncertainty. So I don't know the uncertainty. I don't know the future realization of the delays of payments. But in any case, I have to find a schedule. And this schedule should be robust against all the possible realization of the uncertainty. And then once uncertainty realized, then I can take the second stage decisions, which are kind of compensation of the first stage decision. And in our case, once I've made a schedule and I experience payment delays, okay, my second stage decision is if, when, and how much to use the short-term financing options. So in this case, the goal is to maximize the first stage objective, which is the net present value in our case, plus the expected value of the second stage decisions. And the focus of these any two-stage stochastic program, and of course also of this stochastic program is to build to take first stage decisions which are robust. So in this case, to build a schedule which better hedge against uncertainty. And this will, at the end, enhance resilience of the contractor overall. The general formulation of a two-stage stochastic problem is the following. So I have a first stage problem and the second stage problem. In the first stage problem, we have first stage variables x, and the objective function is the maximization of the first stage objective function plus the expected value of the so-called recurse function. And I have a first stage constraints with these restrictions on the variables. The Q function is the recurse function, which depends on the first stage decision and on the specific realization of the uncertainty omega. And here I have to maximize a second stage objective function subject to a set of constants which link the first stage and the second stage variables. So here I have both x variables and z variable, which are the second stage variable. And in this case, the second stage decision explicitly depends on the on the specific realization of the uncertainty. Okay, casting our model into this framework, here I can again define my decision variables. So I have first stage variables, xit, which are equal to 1 if activity I starts at time t again and 0 otherwise. So this is exactly the variables and the meaning of the variables that we have seen for the deterministic problem. But then in the second stage, I have to determine when payment occur, and so this QIT depends on the specific realization of the uncertainty and the specific realization of the delay that I have. So this becomes 1 if payment for activity I is received at time t under scenario omega, and this should be defined for each omega, for each capital omega, which is the set of scenarios that I have, and 0 otherwise. And then I have also this new variable LT omega, which depends on omega as well, because it's a second stage variable. And this is the amount of short-term loan contracted at period t in scenario omega. And I need this variable because then I want to minimize the financing cost. I want to define an optimal borrowing policy for the company. Okay, so the first stage model is the following. I have to maximize the discounted cash outflows plus the expected value of the recurse function. And then I have the constraints for the first stage. So again, the constraints that we have seen, I have to decide the starting time of each activity, considering the precedences, and I have a deadline for the completion of the project. And in the second stage, I have these constraints here. Now, Q is the payment under delay scenario omega. So I have the definition of this Q, which is related to the completion time of activity I, plus the delay, which I'm experiencing, xi omega. And again, I have this consistency constraint in the sense that only one payment time is possible for each activity. And then I have these constraints, which are cumulative constraints defined for each period. And here I say that the initial capital plus the cumulative cash outflows and inflows plus the amount of money borrowed from lending institution should be greater than 0. So this is a bit different from the capital constraints introduced by Lehman and Banuk. In fact, in that case, the cash flow was enforced to be positive in each time period. Here, I'm allowing to have negative cash flows, but overall, the shortage of cash should be compensated by money borrowed or short-term loans that I can get from the institution, the lending institutions. Okay, so the objective function, the second stage recurse function, is the maximization of the second stage part, second stage function. And here I have the cash inflow, which are discounted through the parameter beta. And then I have the loans, okay? So when I receive a loan, when I receive money, it's a positive term because I'm injecting cash into my project. But then at the end of the project, so this mathematical capital T is the end of the project, I should give back the money that I borrowed with the interest rate. So R is the interest that I'm paying for each period, considering that each short-term debt contracted should be paid back at the end of the project. Okay, so this is an example of the different borrowing policies. For instance, let's come back to the example that we had before. So I have 4 and 5, and I have a shortage of cash flow, okay? And so here I can have different options. For instance, in order to cover this shortage of 25, I can decide to borrow money at time t equal to 4. And I can decide to ask for 25 units. Okay, and then at the end of the horizon, I should repay my debt, paying interest. Or maybe the second option, the option B, could be to have to ask for the money in 2 different tranches. So I have the first tranche, which is at time t equal to 4, and then I will just borrow 5 units. And then at t equal to 6, I will borrow 20 units. And in any case, I will be able to cover the shortage of cash, and I will then repay my debt at the end of the project. These 2 situations here are different, and the associated part into the objective function is reported in the first row above the pictures here. So in the first case, I borrow 25 at period 4, and then I have to repay at period 9 the debt with the interest R, which is paid for 5 time periods. Instead, in the case B, I have obtained money at period 4 and 6, so 5 at period 4 and 20 at period 6, and then I repay my debt at the end of the project. So these 2 functions are different, and there's a trade-off between beta, which is the discounting factor, and the interest rate R. So depending on when the loans are contracted, and also on the level of the interest rate and the discounting factor, I may have different situations. And it's not trivial to understand which is the right and the optimal policy, the optimal borrowing policy. So in this case, if beta is greater than R, so is greater than the interest rate, then I would rather prefer the option A, otherwise I would select the option B. But in general, this is a trade-off, and the mathematical model optimizes these choices as well. Okay, now I want to introduce the concept of risk, because since now we have seen how to formulate the problem as a 2-stage stochastic problem, considering financing options and the cost of financing. Now I want to introduce the concept of risk, but in our case, we should be careful because we have to maximize the net present value. So we know that we have some measure of risk called, for instance, the well-known value at risk, which have been widely used in finance. And the value at risk is essentially the beta quantile of the distribution function. So assuming that I have an investment and I can have losses, okay, and this is the distribution of the losses, the value at risk is the beta quantile of the distribution of losses. And when I'm not lucky, the losses exceed the value at risk. And in this case, I I'm looking at the right tail, and I can be interested in considering the condition, the so-called conditional value at risk, which is the conditional expectation of the losses, given that they exceed the bar. But in our case, we don't have losses. We have a net present value that should be maximized. So we are in the situation, for instance, we can call this profits, okay, or net present value, doesn't matter, but we have to maximize this. So the risk measures becomes safety measures, and the concepts change a bit, but they are very similar. So in this case, I'm interested in finding the threshold profit eta that I'm confident with the probability alpha that it will be achieved. And when I'm not lucky, I'm below this threshold eta. So I'm looking at the left tail of the distribution of the profits. And so this safety measure, safety conditional value at risk, is defined as the expected value of the profits, given that the profits are below the threshold level, which is the safety value at risk. Okay, now we know that this is a well-known reformulation for the conditional value at risk, and in this reformulation I maximize eta, which is the threshold profit, minus the expected value of the realization which are below the expected profit. So eta minus q, but the positive part, because I should consider only the realization below the expected profit, and this is normalized by 1 minus alpha. And this as a linear reformulation, so this can be solved really easily, let's say. Defining, it's sufficient to define this variable, gamma omega, which is the negative variable, so it's the positive part of the difference between eta and the recurse function, the value of the recurse function. And into the objective function, I maximize eta minus the expected value of this gamma omega. P, capital P omega, in this case, is the probability associated with the realization gamma omega, which is the realization of the profits below the threshold. So here, this is all known. I mean, these are standard reformulations, so I can use very well this reformulation. I can plug it into my solver, everything is fine. But the point is that P should be known. So P is the probability associated to this realization. But what happens if P is not known with the certainty? So in this case, we have ambiguity in the probability distribution. So we have a family of probability distribution with similar characteristics. And in this case, we are considering the family of probability distributions that have a probability associated P, which is not the nominal one, P0, but it's the nominal plus the perturbation vector pi. So, and this pi is not known, but for sure, we know that it should satisfy at the end the axioms of probability, so it should be such that the E transpose pi is equal to 0. And the infinity norm of pi should be less than psi, because psi is the upper bound of the fluctuation. So having defined this family of distribution, I'm interested in finding the worst case maximum value of the net present value, considering all the possible distributions belonging to the family defined by the ambiguity set that I had before. Okay, so now I need to solve this problem here. So the infimum over all the possible probability distribution of the maximum of eta minus the expected value normalized by 1 minus alpha. Okay, now let's concentrate a bit on the solution of this. First of all, what I can do is I can move the inf inside the expression here, because eta does not depend on the uncertainty, and I can substitute inf with min, because the expected value is always finite. But still, I have a max min problem, and I need to understand how to deal with this. Okay, so the expected value of the positive part of the net present value, which are below the threshold eta, can be rewritten in this way, as in the box in the left-hand side. So here I have gamma transpose P, where P is the probability, the uncertain probability, and the reformulation that I have seen for the conditional value at risk. on the right-hand side, then I can explicit P in terms of the nominal probability distribution P0 and the perturbation vector pi. So I'm just rewriting the definition of the ambiguity set that I've defined before. But now what I can do is to substitute this P with this value. And so what I obtain on the right-hand side is this model. So I have two terms into the objective function. The first term is a constant term because it's gamma transport P0, and P0 is the nominal probability distribution, constant into the coefficient, because gamma is in any case a decision variable. And then I have another part of the objective function, which is gamma transpose pi, and pi should satisfy this constraint. So here I have just rewritten the infinity p, the infinity norm of pi, and so I have just manipulated a bit the model in order to have it in a nice form. Okay, so still I have max outside this. On top of this, I have still max. So I have still a max-min problem. So the standard technique is to dualize the inner problem. And so this is what I'm doing now. So I can associate dual variables to the constraints of this problem. So the mu, beta, and delta are the variables associated to the three set of constraints that I have. And I can formulate this minimum problem with the maximum maximization problem. So in this case, I maximize the psi transpose beta plus psi transpose delta. I have these equality constraints, and then I have the definition of the variables. Okay, so now with this, I have a max-max problem, and I can solve it. So I have a full plane model that can be solved by Simplex, Gurobi, whatever. The objective function becomes this one. So I have the first stage cost, which are the cash outflows times the XIT, which are discounted back to the start of the project. And then I have this part, so the eta minus the part that we have derived so far. And then the first and the second stage constraint, which have been defined first beforehand. Okay, so this is the risk-averse distributionally robust model, and just a remark here, depending on the values of alpha that we have and C, we may have very different situations. So when alpha is equal to 0, the problem becomes a two-stage risk-neutral problem. When alpha increases, and I have an extreme when alpha is equal to 1, I have a very risk-averse two-stage stochastic programming model. On the other hand, when C is equal to 0, I don't have ambiguity, and so I can have, for instance, in this combination here, in the first right top box, I have a two-stage risk-neutral problem, so the standard two-stage stochastic programming problem. But instead, when C is greater than 0, I have ambiguity, and so I have two-stage distributionally robust with and without risk. And of course, this expressivity of the model comes at a cost, and the cost is the computational complexity. So the problem is not easy to be solved, and for that we have devised a heuristic method. And this heuristic is quite simple. So we build an initial master problem, then we solve this master problem, we check the determination condition, if it's satisfied or not. Once we obtain the solution of the master problem, we need to solve the second stage problem, obtaining a feasible solution for the two-stage distributionally robust model. And then exploiting the information that I can get from this solution, I can add a cut to the master problem, which is solved again until the determination condition is satisfied. Okay, so now I want to explain a bit what is the master problem and the subproblem. So the master problem is the following deterministic model. Here I have first stage decision X, and as you can see, I don't have second stage decision because these are difficult. I mean, the cardinality of this set of decision variables depends on the cardinality of the scenarios. So here I have surrogated variables, hat Q and hat L. And this is the deterministic model that I solve in every iteration. So here, as you can see, this is the delay that's associated to the activity I. Is not anymore dependent on the scenario. So what we did is to consider the expected value of all the possible realizations. So this in such a way to have a deterministic value that we can plug into the model. Okay, here's theta is an approximation of the recurse function. This approximation, it was very difficult to understand what was the right expression or to put on the right side of this constraint. So at the end, we decided to put this, and it's quite effective, I have to say. So theta should be less than or equal this, which is an approximation, let's say, of the second stage of the objective function. This is the master problem. Once the master problem is solved, then I should solve the subproblem. So the subproblem, we have two sets of variables, the Q and the L variables. It turns out that the Q variables can be determined just by inspection, because Q is the payment time associated with the activity I when scenario omega occurs. Okay, so in this case, since I know when the activity starts and I know I'm in a given scenario, I know exactly which is the delay. Okay, so I can evaluate the QIT using this rule. Okay, this simple rule. This is by inspection. But in any case, I have to solve this other problem. So here I can use the X and the Q variable determined at a given iteration K of the algorithm. This K stands for the iteration of the algorithm. And I need to solve this linear problem in order to determine the optimal borrowing policy. Once I've done this, I obtain the QKLB, which is the optimal solution of the subproblem, which gives us a feasible solution for the two-stage distributionally robust problem. And so I can exploit, first of all, I can update my lower bound, and then I can exploit the information that I get from the solution of the subproblem, and I can send back the information into the master problem, which will be amended by cats. And we use two different cats. The first cat is an integer cat which resembles really closely the integer L-shaped cat by Laporte and Louveau. So here I have QKLB, which is the optimal value of the recurse function at iteration K. And here on the right hand side, multiplied, I have 1 plus 2 terms. Okay, let's have a look at these two terms. So the second term is 1 minus xit, and here I consider only the decision variables which take value 1 in the kth iteration. So in this case, whenever I flip the value of this variable from 1 to 0, this term will increase. And in a similar fashion, I can also consider this term here. Here I have the summation of xit, and I'm considering only the decision variables that are 0 into the kth iteration. And so if I flip the solution, so if I change the solution, I should flip this value from 0 to 1, and this again will be greater than 1. So in any case, if I change the current solution, the solution that I obtained in the kth iteration, this term will be greater than 1, and then zeta will be less than or equal QLB multiplied by 1 plus something which is greater than 0 for sure. So actually this cat is a bit loose. We don't have, sorry. Okay, no, this cat is not so tight. It becomes tight only when I have exactly the solution that I obtain in the kth iteration. However, it's effective. In fact, it has been used in the integer L-shaped model, and also in this case, it was effective indeed. And then we have a no good cat. The no good cat just says that I have to move from the current solution to improve. No, so moving from the current solution, changing the schedule means flipping one of the values from 1 to 0, at least 1. Okay, at least 1. Okay, these are the cats. And now results. Okay, so first of all, I want to show you something related to the two-stage stochastic problem without ambiguity. Okay, assuming that I know exactly the probability distribution, and just I want to investigate a bit the sensitivity to the loan interest rate, the R parameter. Okay, here the interest rate is increasing, and as you can see, okay, first of all, the first observation here, cash flows can be negative. Okay, I don't have to have a positive cash flow overall throughout the project. But in any case, I should be able to finance this shortage, to compensate this shortage of cash flow by using the loans, by contracting loans. So in the first case, it's beneficial to contract one big loan at the beginning of the project to finance all the activity, all the activities until the end of the project. But when the interest rate increases, then the situation changes. And so now it's not anymore beneficial, this policy here, but I want to spread out a bit more the loans, the amount of money that I borrow throughout the project, and this is a trend, okay? And so this means that the model is effective in building the optimal borrowing policy and takes into account the interest rate as we expected to see. Another trivial, I have to say, trivial observation is the difference between the deterministic solution and the two-stage stochastic solution and the solutions that we obtain by solving scenario-dependent problems. So I have considered here, this example is for 10 nodes, and just two scenarios, okay, just a toy example. So you can see that in different scenarios, the cash flows profiles are really, really different, okay? And the deterministic solution is even it's again different from both the solution of both of the scenarios. What is expected, which is called the value of stochastic solution, is that when I solve the two-stage model instead of the deterministic solution, I can improve the net present value by 15%. And this is something that we expected to have, because we know that solving two-stage problems is better than just considering the deterministic model with the expected values instead. No? So we didn't do an extensive analysis on this, but just to highlight that the value stochastic solution can be relevant also in this case. But what is more interesting, in my opinion, is this. So this instead is our two-stage distributionally robust model, and I want to investigate the sensitivity of the model with respect to these two parameters, psi and alpha. Okay, alpha is the parameter controlling the risk aversion of the decision maker. So when alpha is equal to 0, we have a risk neutral approach. When alpha increases, we have more risk aversion attitudes. And psi instead is the ambiguity parameter. So when psi is equal to 0, we don't have ambiguity. So we know the probability distribution. And when psi increases, we have ambiguity in the data, in the probability distribution, in particular in the probability of occurrence of the delay. And here we can draw a few observations, let's say. So when psi is equal to 0, I don't have ambiguity. So I have a two-stage stochastic model with different risk levels, no? Because here we have different values of alpha. And you can see that the net present value that we obtain are really different. So in particular, when I have a risk neutral risk-neutral approach, I can overestimate my net present value. But instead, if I'm risk-averse, I can have a better idea, a more realistic idea of the net present value that I will have in the project, during the execution of the project. So this is the first observation. The second observation, which in my opinion was really interesting, was this one. When we have a lot of ambiguity, because 0.2 is the maximum perturbation, C is the maximum perturbation, so I have a lot of ambiguity in my data. Look at the objective functions for different values of alpha. They are really, really close each other. So it means that to some extent, when I consider ambiguity, I don't need to consider risk aversion. I implicitly consider also risk aversion on the decision maker. So it means that I can solve a two-stage model without risk, without the conditional value at risk or whatever, to obtain more or less the same solution. So ambiguity is a way also of addressing risk. And this was an interesting insight, in my opinion. But of course, this is an extreme situation. So 0.2 is a really, really high ambiguity level. So for intermediate ambiguity levels have different situations. And in any case, I need to solve the two-stage distributionally robust model to have a clear idea of the net present value. So as you can see here, we have different values for 0.05 and 0.1 value of C. Another observation, which is to some extent related, is the price of distributional robustness. So this is the difference between the objective function with ambiguity and without ambiguity. Sorry. So when I'm in this situation here, again, for different values of alpha, so for example, in the yellow part, okay, I have different values of alpha and C equal to 0.2, which was the extreme case. And here we can see that the value, the value of the price of distributional robustness are quite high. And again, when alpha is 0.5, we have these close values here. So similar observation, but not exactly the same. Okay, now I want to comment a bit about the heuristic performance. So we have considered 10 instances from the DC2 dataset of Oncu in 2010, 9 combinations for the distribution of cash flow, 3 values for the capital constraintedness, so the level of capital, the initial capital, with respect to the total cash outflows and inflows of the project, 3 scenarios cardinalities, 4 values for C, 4 values for alpha, 3 different deadlines, or 4 different values of deadlines, and we obtained a total of around 40,000 instances that we solved. By using the heuristic method and by using Burabi. And this is just a summary of the results. Just I want to show you these two graphs. Okay, here I have the heuristic time versus the exact solution. So in this case, as you can see, we imposed a time limit, and the time limit was 300 seconds. In any case, was quite reasonable. I mean, this is a kind of strategic model to be solved. And in any case, we observed that the heuristic solution is just a fraction of the solution taken by the solver to get the exact solution when possible, or the best solution found within the time limit. So this was some promising results. These are promising results, let's say. And another nice feature that I want to show you are the gaps. These are the gaps averaged over all the 40,000 instances, but divided into different scenarios cardinality. So as you can see, the blue one is the scenario cardinality equal to 20. So we have considered 20 scenarios, and as you can see, the gaps are quite low. And these are instead, for when we consider 40 and 60 scenarios, so we have an increase in the gap, but the gap here is negative. It's always negative, so it means that we are improving the solution found by the solver. It's always negative, on average, of course. This is not true for all the instances, but on average, we are able to improve the solution obtained by the solver. And here, when I have this close to 0, it means that we are really close to the optimal solution, because these are small instances, you know, and so we are close to the optimal solutions. So overall, the results were satisfying. Limitations. Okay, for sure, the size of the model. So we considered 10 activities, but 10 is not realistic for instance, a real case study. So the size of the model is an issue, and of course, in order to deal with the computational complexity, we should also understand how to design efficient tailored solution approaches, maybe also exact solution approaches. To the best of my knowledge, we have a few exact methods for two-stage stochastic problem with conditional variate risk objective functions, but this specific case has not been investigated so far. So it would be nice to understand a bit more about the structure of the problem and possible exact approaches. And also it would be interesting to see how different payment modes impact into the financing costs. If it's better to consider, for instance, payment at completion of the activity as it's now, or maybe other payment modes like so at given milestones, or we can think about that also. And something which is I'm really curious to know what happens, but I wasn't able to do it, is to understand on a real case study to what extent forecasting techniques can be used. So forecasting techniques to forecast the delays and also maybe the nominal probabilities. So these are interesting future directions, but of course I'm also very curious to know your opinion about this recent work.
Okay, thank you very much, Maria. And now let me ask the public for the questions. So please go ahead. If you have a question, just start to ask, unmute your mic, and it should work. If there is no question, then I will ask for some clarification, Maria. May I ask you to go to the second slide of computational results, this 3 graphs.
Second slide of the computational results.
Yeah, but you have to share the screen again.
Yes. Yes, let's share it.
There are like 2 scenarios, I think.
Yes, okay. Okay, maybe now you should see my screen.
No,
yes.
Yeah, I see it to the second slide. Yeah,
this
second.
This one. Okay.
Yeah. So the graph in the middle considers some scenario, which is called second scenario, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it is this 2-stage stochastic approach, right? And the last one is deterministic solution, which is working on the same scenario.
Yeah, but aggregating the realization into one value, which is the average of the values of the 2 scenarios.
Okay. But it's working on the second scenario or on the aggregation of several scenarios?
No. The deterministic solution is obtained by solving a deterministic problem considering the expected value of the realization of the 2 realizations that we have. So it's a deterministic, what is called the expected values.
Okay, and then I would like to go to the last slide of computational results, which is about the negative gap. So, so when the instance is small, then the solver probably finds optimal solution.
Yeah.
You don't have the proof if it's optimal or not, right?
Yeah, for some instances, yes, we have.
For some instances, yes. But we can expect that it's for the leftmost is optimal. But for the others, since there is a negative gap, it means the solver didn't find the optimum. On the other hand, Heuristic was faster, so it found better solution than the solver in a limited time, right? Yeah, the heuristic found a better solution than the solver, yes, but we don't have any guarantee of optimality of the solution, however. Yeah, but the solver didn't find optimal solution because it has a limited time, right? Yeah, in most of the cases, yes. Okay, thank you. No, thank you. Now the questions. So Mike, maybe you want to ask something? You have unmuted.
Well, let me ask you a question. Did you get any industries interested in your approach?
Not yet.
But have you approached industries? Are you talking with them?
No, but no, this was just a research exercise, let's say. But of course, I think that this can have a true impact. So yes, maybe we will do it in the future. At the moment, yes, we are just validating the model and considering different solution approaches, because the point is that when we approach companies, through companies, we should be able to provide them with the solutions for real instances, and the size is still a problem. So what we can eventually do is to try to explore the combination of artificial intelligence techniques to get solutions, faster solutions to bigger problems. But at the moment, we are still in the research phase, let's say.
Yeah, maybe you have to write a second paper that is more accessible to industry and a more applied, less technical paper. And maybe in the less technical paper, even you have to put some buzzwords that industries likes, like AI and I don't know what. And then they read it, and you can get them to start that they become interested in what you're doing.
Yes, good suggestion. We will think about it, and it will be nice to have real data.
Yeah.
We couldn't get real data.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. Any other question? Hi, Guohua.
Guohua, you have any questions?
You have any questions?
In China, there are late payments also.
No, I don't believe so.
They're very good in late payments.
Guohua, we don't hear you. You have to unmute.
Guohua.
I have to unmute. Yeah, actually, you know, I observed some companies in China. They are using similar method to manage their cash flow. Not a late payment, but say suppose you have some cash, okay, and then every month you have some demand, right? So basically, you have similar problem like this. But I don't know what is exactly the difference. So when I listen to this talk, I think there may be some similarity. Actually, I observed some of my students, actually, they have some startup companies running things like this.
Oh yeah, in general, companies, they have they implement many strategies to manage to optimize cash flows. So I can very well believe that this is for sure true. And I don't know, maybe it could be interesting to see exactly what they do, and maybe we can integrate into their software something that they didn't consider.
Yeah.
Thank
you. I think that's a very good suggestion from Professor Mac Pinedo. So yeah, accept the mathematical theory, and then we would like to look at some applications of this kind of models.
Yes, if you have real data, I will be very, very thankful. Okay.
Okay.
I may have a question, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
In some situations, maybe I like this part in the presentation, so sorry. In sometimes, maybe the client has the right to pay, let's say, 45 days after receiving the product. So is it possible to include it in the model, or is it included yet?
Has the right to pay later than yes, it can be included, of course. And I have to say that in Europe we have a new regulatory framework trying to discipline also the behavior of the clients and the late payments. Yes, in our model can be included, and of course this is also will let us become closer to the reality, no? So to the actual practice of companies. So yes, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, because in food industry, for instance, I think they sell the product before paying the supplier, so the money work for them in the middle, and so they gain even more money before paying the supplier. So.
Yes, different dynamics can be included into the model, and this will add realism of into the model. Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation.
No, thank you for attending.
Okay, any other question? So Mehi is connecting. Mehi Al-Bali, do you want to ask something? Not yet. So thank you very much for the talk, Maria Elena. It was really very interesting. And let me remind you that there will be a next talk on December 13 in 2 weeks. It will be given by Céline Sevenhuis from TU Eindhoven, and she will speak about sub-exponential time algorithm for makespan scheduling of unit jobs with precedence constraints. Okay, so you can observe how nice sequence of female talks we have, right? So we are
Glad to be part of that.
we're on very good track, so to say. It's not always, but this time we are really very strong. Okay, so thank you once more, and
Thank you.
bear with us.
Yes. Thank you for inviting me. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
nice talk.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.